Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals in episode 743. In the offseason, still in the coaching cycle, as the Cardinals still do not have a head coach. Joining me, as almost always, is co-host Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And Seth, we've got some recent developments about the Cardinals coaching search. One that came through today on a Tuesday, two that happened over the holiday weekend, and when it looked like the Cardinals were going to start on their round of second interviews, we learned of two potential finalists, and neither of them even got here, which is the most Cardinals thing ever, isn't it?
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, and you look at why and the reasoning, and we know, I mean, there's obvious, and then there's not as obvious. And the first one is, obviously ownership it matters, but the second one is, you have the third pick in the draft, but it's a clear kind of one quarterback draft, right? And so one of the guys that basically told them no thank you has kind of been in that position before, where there's an incumbent that's on his way out, that's good enough to win football games in the NFL, and there's no clear plan about what's going to happen, and he's been through that before. So, not shocking. I think you would agree. Not shocking in the least that these guys did not want to come here, but now we continue to sit and wait and see what is next.
Yep, and so referring to that, over the weekend on Monday, first it was on Sunday when it came out that Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley was going to be a finalist for like 6 different jobs, that he was highly sought after. Now, we know that a lot of those reports are agents driven, but that he was the front runner for the Miami Dolphins job, lo and behold, he becomes the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. The Cardinals were one of those teams that requested a second interview with him, and essentially saying that he was one of their finalists. However, that interview doesn't happen. They ended up with a second interview scheduled with Robert Saleh, the 49ers defensive coordinator, scheduled for today, Tuesday. However, he was in Tennessee on Monday with the head coaching interview, and you and I saw it when the report came out, and everyone's like, please get on the plane. I'm like, the wording of the report, he has an interview with the Cardinals on Tuesday. He's in Tennessee right now. If they don't hire him as their head coach, he's getting on that plane. It didn't sound like Saleh really ever intended to interview with the Cardinals, but would have, but that was never his intention. Doesn't it feel like?
Yeah, and that intention matters, right? Like, you're talking about the fact that this is a guy who, had multiple opportunities or differing opportunities, I guess is the way to look at it. Was a candidate for the bigger jobs, and let's be honest, I think going to Tennessee or Arizona makes a lot more sense than going to Baltimore or Pittsburgh, where it's win or bust, right? Like, and the reason I say that is because not because there's less expectations, but there's a little bit less pressure. I mean, we have to be completely honest about it. There's less pressure to win in Arizona and Tennessee. And so if you can get a lot of quality things in Tennessee, which is what he's getting. I mean, you go there, whether or not you believe in Cam Ward is irrelevant to what Robert Saleh believes of Cam Ward. And so if he thinks Cam Ward can be a playoff quality quarterback, then he believes in that. And he had to scheme for him this year, I believe, right? Because they played the Titans this year, and gave up 24 points, to them. And so though that mattered, they have, I believe, over 100 million in cap space this offseason. That matters. They have a very good draft pick sitting at 4th overall. That matters. Like, all of those things matter to a coach. And you might say, well, the Cardinals have some of that. Yeah, they do, but the quarterback being the main thing, and then the secondary thing being the money. And the Titans are in the midst, I believe, of building that, beautiful new facility. They're going to have, he's going to have a chance to open that new stadium. Obviously it could change, but it's supposed to be done in February of 2027. So there's a, realistic chance he's going to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans when they open their new stadium, which is in turn going to allow them to have more money to then spend more money on, other things, including getting a great coaching staff. So, like, all of those little things matter when you're considering where you're going to go for your probably last chance as a head coach, right? If it's another flame out.
Yeah, that's, if most guys get a couple of shots, especially as poorly as it kind of went for Saleh and for the Jets. I know everyone got their hopes up in our group chat. There were people getting really excited, like, get him on that plane, get him on that plane. It felt like it was just leverage. Like, he would have come here and interviewed, but it probably would have taken a lot of convincing for him to actually take the job. And that's a bummer, because it shows just how unattractive the Cardinals job is. Jeff Hafley, now the Jeff Hafley thing surprised both of us. You're like, a guy that hasn't been a head coach. He's coached in college, yes, but he's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL for 2 years. He seemed like just a whatever type of candidate, and apparently all the teams he interviewed for wanted him to come back for a second interview. So we'll see what happens with the Dolphins. But, like, I know your reaction was, "Oh, Jeff Hafley's been hired." Well, good. The Cardinals can't hire him.
Yeah, and that's not a shot at Hafley. I just was unimpressed with what he did in college, and he hasn't done it as long in the NFL, to make that matter. So, those are the things that you look at in that instance right now. And you see a guy that is going to have a chance to make his legacy in Miami for a group that is probably rebuilding in a similar way to the Cardinals, right? Now they did get a new GM. So that's slightly different than the Cardinals. But it's not like they're sitting on a gold mine of picks and money, right? Like, so all of those things are going to play into how interesting that Miami job really was. But we also have to acknowledge that there's a lot of headaches in that Miami job as well, right? Like you do have
Yes.
the Tua, the Tyreek, all of those situations have to be kind of figured out, and we haven't got a clue what's going to happen with those things.
Nope. And we don't know what the situation in here in Arizona is either. So let's move on to the little bit that we do know. So coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk of the Web, they're a new candidate and a little bit more. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the Best Our Cardinals Talk of the Web, talking about the Cardinals and their coaching search. Out of the blue, now I'm assuming this is a first interview, but the Cardinals interviewed Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. Why he wasn't part of the first 13, I don't know. Maybe doesn't it if this is a first interview, doesn't it feel like that the Cardinals are starting over? Because that's the kind of impressions that their two favorite guys in Hafley and Saleh are gone. Like they were their top choices, and they're donezo. Because now they're bringing in new ones, and to me that seems interesting. Or am I reading this wrong?
I just think that their perceived favorites are still coaching.
Okay.
So
and they're just interviewing guys to interview guys?
Well, so here's my thing, and this I really truly mean this. How do you think people would react if with the idea of them not doing anything this week at all?
I just had a thought. Maybe it was a dual type interview. Not only head coach, but potentially being somebody's OC.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wondered that too, and it's one of those situations where Brady is young. And so we talked about this a little bit with regards to both of the Rams coordinators, right? Sometimes they have to take that shot. They have to take that opportunity of getting a guy a year or two before he's probably ready, because once he is the guy, the rising star, they're not getting that interview, right? And so if you look at Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, you look at Mike LaFleur, the Rams offensive coordinator, and now you look at Joe Brady, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, all sub 40 years old, all probably another year away from being real candidates in the hiring cycle. If you're the Cardinals and you can convince one of those guys, like, hey, take this job, you're going to have a bit longer leash, because it is a rebuild and whatnot. Like, all of that matters.
Yeah. Interesting that his offenses have been good. Well, they've been good and they've been bad. He's been a top 10 offense and top 5 offense every year in Buffalo. For 3 straight years, they were top 5 in points and top 10 in yards. But his 2 years in Carolina were and now he did get tons of credit in his year at LSU as the passing game coordinator for what he did for Joe Burrow in that fantastic year he had before he was the first overall pick. But Joe Brady it's for me, he's an interesting name because it hasn't felt like he's like ready. Like you're maybe saying maybe it's a year early, but it hasn't felt like he's like head coach material. But who knows? Who knows? There was one surprise as well. And there were two surprises over the weekend, and one is related to Joe Brady. Is the fact that Sean McDermott got fired as head coach of the Bills, which opened up. He's a guy who took a moribund franchise in Buffalo, turned them into a contender, just couldn't get them over the hump there. So with Sean McDermott, and he says he wants to coach again. I mean, we've had the conversation about John Harbaugh. Wouldn't Sean McDermott be a good fit in Arizona?
Oh yeah, and that's the thing is you know it doesn't seem like there's even an option for it. Unfortunately, he just doesn't even seem interested, right? Like, and there was a report that came out that said, "Oh, McDermott's not interested in the Cardinals or the Raiders." Maybe, I mean, maybe that's accurate. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But I don't think it's a bad thing ever to go pursue those guys.
And I would say
And
something like it would also say something about the Cardinals. Like go look for that big fish to see if there's interest, because it always feels like the Cardinals, every coaching cycle is kind of gets the leftovers, gets picked over, is the one that takes the the courtesy interview. Cardinals do know how to pursue people. Like they pursue JJ Watt. They've done that for players. Like, why wouldn't they do that for an established winning head coach? Really, the only thing he hasn't done is get to the Super. That's it. He hasn't gotten the Super Bowl. He took those Bills teams to the playoffs a gazillion times. They won the AFC East so many times. They've won lots of playoff games. They choked against Denver. They struggle against Kansas City, but like make a grand gesture. Like we've seen the Cardinals do a little bit of everything. Come on, it's wouldn't like Denny Green didn't work out, but Denny Green laid the framework for the Super Bowl appearance with Ken Wisenhunt, and the Cardinals haven't gone with an established head coach since Denny Green.
yeah, and McDermott would be the best on paper hire they've ever had. I don't think that's even particularly a controversial take, right? Like on paper, he would be their best hire they've ever had. It's just you have to get a guy that wants to be there, and that's a legitimate question. Is like, does he want to be involved with the Arizona Cardinals? And to now, right, it kind of seems like the answer is no. But these reports all come out all the time, and you have no idea if who's accurate, who's not, right?
But the one report that came out that was probably shocking to everyone was to see Drew Petzing land as the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. Of all the guys that the Lions could have gotten, they end up with Drew Petzing. Now, apparently, Drew Petzing has a good relationship with Ben Johnson, who's now head coach of the Chicago Bears, of course. But interesting. Like, how surprised were you? Because this felt like it came out of like as much as everyone here talked about how bad Drew Petzing was, and even though for 2 years they had some good offensive metrics, we wondered about the stability of his ability to do things offensively. Basically it was run the ball, and their passing game was tight end, one receiver, dump to the running back. Is there any way is the talent that they have at Detroit, is it going to be good enough for him to succeed and to have them be better than what they were this year?
Yeah. That's the question. And, it's interesting because I think there's a happy medium between he's complete and utter garbage, like we're seeing from a lot of fans, and he's a guy who probably didn't run the offense he wanted to run the entire time, or the way he wanted to run it. And so those things all are going to be really interesting to watch, because there's an unquestioned reality that he's going to have the best group of offensive talent that we've ever seen, right? But it's going to be interesting if he is able to really put together a game plan that features all of the weapons they have, because in his time in Arizona, right, that was always the biggest of complaints, was that he's kind of singularly focused in terms of, the run, we've always said it's the running back. By the way, Jahmyr Gibbs is better than any running back the Cardinals have had. No offense to James Conner. The tight end, while their tight end, whose name is escaping my brain real quick, is fantastic. He's not quite Trey McBride. But his best wide receiver is Amon-Ra St. Brown. So are they going to use St. Brown in more of like the Trey McBride role, right? And then, or will they use the tight ends, in the McBride role, and will he be able to use St. Brown as out of the slot, something he's not great at, again, utilizing the tight end and the slot receiver, in congruence with one another. So those are all legitimate questions that have to be asked about Petzing. But I mean, are Cardinals fans, honest question, like, is this where you divorce your spouse and then they get somebody that's like really attractive, and you're like, wait, why did they
that happen?
Yeah, how did they upgrade, right? Like, because isn't that kind of what it seems like? Like, what if you're Arizona Cardinals fans, you hated Drew Petzing, so why do you care? Like,
it's hilarious. Like, well, it's also just, you're like, especially because this year felt like that the goal was to blame this season on Kyler and Drew Petzing, and how Drew Petzing lands with the freaking Detroit Lions. Not that the Lions were good this year, but that's a fun offense to work with. You've got, Jared Goff, he's good. They've got the running backs. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe he can help unlock something with Jameson Williams. You got Sam Laporta. Like, it's just, they've got a good offensive line. It's just, it is crazy. And it goes to show that fans have no idea, or NFL people don't have any idea either. So,
well,
it's really just like a boys club of friends who know each other.
Well, and I do think that there is this reality too, Jess, that nobody takes the Cardinals seriously. So if you failed with the Cardinals, so to speak, it doesn't mean that you're a bad coach. It just means that you coached in a bad organization. And I do think that that's something that Cardinals fans struggle hearing, is that, like, no, like, these guys don't care about about the Cardinals. These guys only care about what the perception is in the NFL. And you got to remember, coming into the year, it was Drew Petzing was a legit NFL head coaching candidate. So the way that the NFL looks at this is that he didn't fail the Cardinals failed him. And that's something that we all have to not, like it's a big deal, but that we all have to kind of wrap our head around, right? As Cardinals fans. It is an insult to the Cardinals. It is an insult to the fan base. And so maybe that's why the fans are upset about it, right? Like, oh, how dare you think that he's going to be good for outside of Arizona, because he wasn't good outside of Arizona, or wasn't good in Arizona, but also at the same time, you have your own issues that in your own house. Like, so why even care or worry what other organizations are doing with your former coaches? Let's be honest. I went back through it, Jess, and I don't know if you've ever done it. It's a very sad thing to do, by the way, so I don't recommend it by any means. But have you ever just gone back through and looked at like the coaches on the roster the year that the head coach got fired? And until recently with like Vance, it wasn't like there's this, teaming of talent. I mean, Byron Leftwich
got another shot because it was Arians.
Right. And by
James
the way,
Betcher bounced around a little while, but not like he had the one DC job and then his kind of moved back into position coaches / consultants.
Right. Harold Goodwin doesn't do anything. All of these things that are really, so for Petzing to get a job, I hate to say it, but it does say a lot about Petzing, because literally, I mean, think about it. The last like hot coordinator from the Cardinals, outside of like Vance Joseph, was Todd Bowles, right? Yeah. Like 2014, guys. Like, you look at it, Ray Horton never got another shot. I mean, he was the DC for Ken again, but didn't get another shot. Mike Miller, does anybody even remember that name? He had to go to the CFL because everybody was like, yeah, absolutely not. Right? Like, so that's the reality of the situation. It's actually insane that this dude got a shot, because it never happens. It never happens. When guys get fired, or not fired, but when guys are part of staffs that get fired, you rarely see them resurface. We talked about like Billy Davis, remember? I mean, he had to go back. He was a DC for 3 years, really bad in Philly, and then he had to go back to being a linebackers coach, right? Like, that guy didn't even get a head coaching job, fail, and then go back to being a DC. He was a DC, failed, and had to go back to be a linebackers coach. So like that's typically what happens of Cardinals coordinators and things of that nature. So to see that, happen and all of that work out, it's a little different because we just never see it, right?
But let's see a couple other places. Obviously, Jonathan Gannon's getting a little interest for DC jobs. Drew Terrell also getting some interest in a few places. But yeah, it's been interesting for sure. We've got one more thing to talk about, and that's coming up next on the Rise of Secret podcast, the best hour Cardinals talk on the web. Let's talk about what happened to the playoffs over the weekend. That's coming next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Secret podcast, Best Hour of Cardinals talk on the web. We're now down to the final four games, the final four teams. We got the NFC and the AFC championship games this weekend on Sunday. It will be the New England Patriots at the Denver Broncos and the LA Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Let's start talking about that Bills Broncos game, because it was more or less what we expected to see. The problem was Buffalo looked like they were 100% in control of this game, and it was one of the best and worst games that Josh Allen's ever had. And if you can explain that, it was both one of the best and the worst games Josh Allen's ever had. They turned the ball over 5 times, but he also played, he also got them in position they rallied back from down 23-10 to take a 27-23 lead, to take them down to get the game tying field goal. But man, I mean, this was an exciting game, even though it was heartbreak for the Bills. And I said the Bills and Josh Allen had the most pressure on them this postseason because Patrick Mahomes was out of the way. And given his opportunity, Josh Allen, while he had a good game, also he cost his team the game too.
Yeah, it was almost like the pressure was a little too much for him, and he went too much into hero ball and doing too much in terms of trying to do too much. And you look at what they did, especially in that second half, 20 points against, one of the best defenses in the NFL, to then lose the game in overtime, having 2 possessions. And it was almost like the Bills needed that overtime, right? Or the Broncos, excuse me. They needed that overtime to get them back into the swing of things defensively, because it was just such they were really, really good in the first half, 3 fumbles and an interception. And then from the 2:30 mark on, you saw that the Bills offense just moved the ball kind of at will, right? Like they had over 200 yards in their final 3 possessions. And then you get the interception. I know it's controversial, but the more you look at it, the more you see that it truly was an interception. And this is a game that showed that Sean McDermott allegedly was right in his meeting with everybody. He allegedly met with Terry Pagula, the owner of the Bills, and the GM Brandon Beane, and told him like this staff isn't good, or this roster isn't constructed well enough to win a Super Bowl. And they obviously disagreed, and probably shouldn't have, because it doesn't seem like this roster, the defense seemed like it was, but the offense just seemed flawed. It didn't really have a ton of talent in terms of wide receivers, right? And not that you have to have talent at wide receiver to win, but when your quarterback is your best weapon and then you don't give him a bunch of weapons, it does create that chaos of too often that this guy is having to play hero ball instead of trying to give him shots and opportunities to win the game. Man, I'm just really sad at the very kind of end of this game, because Bo Nix fractures his ankle.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, of all the
and virtually,
so Josh Allen gets bumped And then Bo Nix, you're like, okay, he gets something, fractures his ankle. We're going to get Jared Stidham.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we were probably going to go in order, but like now you look at the other side of the AFC, and I mean, even though the Broncos are hosting, right? There's no way that anybody's taking the Broncos over the Patriots.
No, I wouldn't.
So
I wouldn't.
So it's just one of those things that it sucks because it seemed like it was going to be fun. You had Bo Nix, Drake May, right? Like that was going to be fun. You had two really good defenses that would battle it out, blah, 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 all that stuff. And instead you end up with, like you said, Jarrett Stidham against this Patriots team that, their curse is
made
ended.
CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert look silly.
Yeah, and their curse is ended. And they're back to being able to whatever blood magic they use, they're back to it, and you now have the reality that they are once again the heavy favorites in the AFC. And then, from the dirty side of things, as Cardinals fans, you're like, oh my gosh, nobody wants the Pats to win, but you can't cheer for anybody in the NFC West. So, like, as Cardinals fans, you're literally going, we're really cheering for Jarrett Stidham to get this done for us. Like, that's our hope, is that Jarrett Stidham finds a way to get things done for the Cardinals. Holy crap, this sucks.
I mean, if Vance Joseph's going to be their next head coach, wouldn't it be fun to be the Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph?
Oh, 100%. That's what you have to look at is, but
not that no fan wants Vance Joseph. That's the funny part about it.
Which is just crazy. I mean, I get it. Been there, you're thinking to yourself, been there, done that, don't want to do it again. I truly do understand that, but at the same time, it's like, guys, you're the Cardinals. Like, let's have some realistic, idea of what, who you're going to attract in terms of talent, because again, they haven't attracted talent ever. You just covered it. Denny Green was the most decorated coach they've ever hired in terms of head coaching experience. Now, so if they got Vance Joseph, God forbid, a Super Bowl winning Vance Joseph, but even if he gets, like, can you imagine if Vance Joseph goes through Josh Allen and helps lead the Broncos to a Super Bowl with Jarrett Stidham, and Cardinals fans are going to be like, no, that's not the guy I want. You're like, okay, who do you want? But, that Texans defense, man, that's sad that they're out, because, and it just kind of goes to this, it kind of goes to, we can always apply this back into Arizona Cardinals, right? That sometimes the grass isn't always greener, or these guys that look like they're, clearly better than Kyler Murray. That's why you got to go back into the draft and get a guy, aren't. CJ Stroud, 4 interceptions. Woody Marks has a fumble, 5 turnovers from the Texans offense, and the defense gives up 20 points and loses because the offense is just like, that's insane. I mean, think about it. They forced 3 turnovers. The Texans
still got blown out.
And see how they still got blown out. Dude, like,
they held New England to 3 of 14 on third down. They held them to 248 total yards and lost by 12.
Like, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson combined for 5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. like dude, it's just insane that defense is out because their quarterback, who everybody lauded as the next best quarterback, who, probably had one of, if not the best rookie seasons in NFL history, stinks now. I mean, there's nothing else to it. Like, he's
1 year, we needed the Texans to be bad. Like, the only year he's been good was the year it completely screwed the Cardinals. Of course.
I know. And so you look at it and you go, this is such a Cardinals thing. And so with this group specifically, like this, the talent, all of that stuff, this is without a doubt one of the most depressing games you can remember, because the Patriots didn't do anything that deserved to win. Now, you do have to give their defense credit as well, right? Their defense played well, clearly forcing 5 turnovers. But some of those throws from CJ, man, it's like you and me out there trying to like throw the football. It's wild to see how poorly a guy that was just glorified as the next guy. And that's why, whether it's CJ, whether it's Jaden Daniels, whoever it is, that's why I just am like, guys, slow your roll. It's 1 year. Like, let's get to
it happened with Jaden Daniels too. Like, granted, his was injury related, but that's kind of like that first year. Like, when it's really good, can they keep it up? Because the league catch up. By the way, Cardinals legend Kyrus Tonga with a sack and 2 quarterback hits in that game. Kyrus Tonga.
I know, it's wild to see how this all came about and what they did. And now we get Jarrett Stidham, a backup, against the Patriots. And as Nick Foles trolled on X right after the game, don't worry, Broncos fans, Patriots struggle with backup quarterbacks. So, I think that's the biggest hope. I mean, how in depth do we want to go into this Seattle-San Francisco game?
I mean, holy cow. The like, it was like the wheels all like San Francisco. I don't know how they managed to keep it together all year, but those final 2 games against Seattle in the season finale and then in the divisional round, Seattle just absolutely dismantled them. And I don't know whether to worry about, like, whether to think that perhaps the Niners have just fallen apart, or wonder just how good the Seahawks are, because they look devastating.
Yeah, they do. And then you look at a couple other things, right? You have Brock Purdy, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have these massive Niners contracts that they just signed. Nick Bosa. And there are a lot of questions about all of those guys. They're 13th in cap space. Obviously, they can make some things, but you look at it, Nick Bosa, their number 1 cap hit in 2026 at $42 million. But then listen to these numbers afterwards, Jess. 38-year-old Trent Williams, just under $39 million. Okay. And by the way, they cut him. They only saved $4 million. It's $34 million in dead cap. Okay. Brock Purdy, $25 million. Fred Warner, $18 million. 33-year-old George Kittle, coming off an Achilles injury, $16 million. By the way, Jess, they can't cut him. It's $41 million in dead cap. Brandon Ayuk, $15 million. They got to trade him, and it's still going to be $29 million in dead cap. Like, that's their top guys. And there is literally just, I mean, it's so many questions for them going into next year because of the injuries, where they're at. And so that's an interesting one. And like you said, Seattle just looks really, really good. And then in the other one, and you know, that's this Rams Bears game.
Oh my gosh, what a fun game. Caleb Williams, what a ridiculous throw for the touchdown. Like he ran back, like he scrambled backwards like 30 yards to throw that ball, and it was just a heave. And how did Cole Kmet get 5 yards behind everyone in the end zone? That I will not understand.
Oh, there's a great angle of him shoving the cornerback. So, and I don't even care. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, you got to call PI, whatever. But here's the thing, man. The Bears win that game if Caleb Williams doesn't stink outside of the end of the game. I mean, you look at his 2 games in the playoffs, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a sub 53% completion percentage. He threw for a lot of yards, 600 yards. Like, it is a genuine question of what do they have in Caleb Williams? And the only real like comp in terms of not style, but like statistical things that I've seen that kind of makes sense is Cardinals early Carson Palmer, where it was like he can make all the throws, he can do all this stuff, but he's gonna rip it and he's gonna eat turnovers and he's not gonna worry about it, right? Because like that throw, like you mentioned, was such an utterly ridiculous play, but they shouldn't have been in that point. They shouldn't have even been there.
No, they shouldn't have.
Like they should have won the game multiple times. By the way, 2 touchdown passes for Caleb, so that hit. Jess and I were we really liked that one in that game. You know, and on the flip side, Matt Stafford, you have a guy who sub 50% completion percentage, no touchdowns, no interceptions, which is the big thing. The offense looked mostly average for the Rams, right? They had good series, but like for the most part, it was an average offensive performance for the Rams. But man, Matthew Stafford's throw from the far hash on that out route was one of the better throws that you're going to see in the playoffs. And as good as the throw was, I text this to my buddies. That catch by Devontae Adams was even better because you got to think about time, place, situation, and he had 1 catch at that point, Jess. 1.
And yeah,
and so his second catch is a diving, a foot, maybe 2 feet off the ground on snow, sliding down, having to get your second foot like that's just like all of, and in that situation on top of it, like that catch was just legitimately insane. You saw big time
throw was it couldn't have been a better throw.
It couldn't have been anywhere else where it was going to be incomplete, whether it was batted down by a corner who had great position or, you know, it was uncatchable. Like those were the only 2 options. And so it's interesting to see that because, you know, when you look at the quarterback play in the playoffs, outside of Sam Darnold, it really wasn't very good, right? Like, and even Sam Darnold didn't really have to do anything.
And that was good for them because he came into that game hurt.
Yeah.
But, you know, with the quarterbacks that are left, the one thing, like the one, you have an assassin in Matthew Stafford. Drake May, I don't know, is he there yet? Year two, but the quarterbacks that are left, if there is a drive that you need, there's only one quarterback I trust out of all those four.
1,000%. The fact that it's Stafford, Darnold, and now Stidham and May. And think about it, even if it was Knicks, like it's not like Knicks exactly lit the world on fire in that game. Again, both or all young quarterbacks did okay, but a lot of them left so much on the field that the other team had these chances. And you look at all of that, and that's to say, the Broncos couldn't run the ball against the Bills. I mean, could not run the ball. And again, they didn't try exactly. They carried the ball 22 times in the game. They had 70 yards rushing in 22 carries. That's miserable. But they made big plays in certain spots, which allowed them to have the game that they had. And when you look at it from that perspective, and I know we'll do this on Thursday, that's why no matter what, nobody's buying the Broncos. If they had been able to run the ball consistently against the Bills, I think people would be like, oh, okay, I could see that coming. But maybe you do off the top of your head. I don't remember the last time we saw a nearly touchdown line in a conference championship game. I really don't. And it's up to
not the top of my head. No,
it's up to 5.5. And by the way, for the road team,
like yes, for the road team against the number 1 seed.
Right. I guess that's the way I should have phrased it. I don't remember the last time I saw a road favorite like almost a touchdown. Like that's absurd. So it's going to be, it's going to be interesting because, like I said at the top of this segment, we're cheering for Jarrett Stidham and the Broncos at this point because the Bills flamed out, because the Bears flamed out, because Houston flamed out. Like, think about going into this weekend, right? Buffalo, Denver didn't care, right? We didn't care. But then Bo Nix fractures his ankle, and you're like, really? Like, the one team that, with the results that came out of this weekend, we would have cheered for, their quarterback fractures his ankle. And I wanted to mention one last thing, Jess. I talked about the Niners, and I know it's more divisional centric, so that's why I talked about it. But the Niners cap situation is interesting. But man, the Bears cap situation is miserable, dude. And just to run through it real quick, 29-year-old DJ Moore, who the fans desperately hate, is their top cap hit at $28.5 million. Montez Sweat, $25 million. He's 30 years old. Now they do save some if they cut him, but not great. Jalen Johnson, $25 million. He's in a good spot. Joe Tooney, 34-year-old Joe Tooney, who was phenomenal, so you're not going to complain, right? But $21.5 million. But with offensive line play, it can go at any time, right? Grady Jarrett, $19 million, $21 million in dead cap. Like, oh man, they're in, and they only have $3.6 million in cap space. Like, they're in just such a bad way cap wise. That's why when people say, next year, like, Dan Campbell said it best, right? After they lost, this could have been our best shot. And that's just the reality of the NFL. Like, unless you have a Patrick Mahomes, you can't.
This is fleeting. It's fleeting.
Right. And think about it. The next best quarterback of the generation, Josh Allen, never been to the Super Bowl. The next best quarterback after him, Lamar Jackson, has he even been to the conference championship? I don't even know. I'm asking. So, like, it's not just fleeting. It's so far and away a year-to-year situation unless you have an all-time great, like a Tom Brady, like a Peyton Manning, and we could put Mahomes in there, 3 Super Bowls. That's insane. The rest of these guys, like, and then when you get into the same era as those guys, right? You end up with Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees and Eli Manning and all those other guys that were really good quarterbacks, but could never get over the hump. And I saw that statistic. I think and I could be wrong, but it's the first time in 15 years. Or no, sorry, this is the 15th. Maybe it's the 17th. It's the 15th or 17th consecutive year that either the Patriots or the Chiefs are in the AFC Championship game. Like, think about that. Like, that's what we talk about with consistency.
Wow. That doesn't sound like fun at all. Awesome. With that, we'll wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Hour Cardinals Talk on the Web, episode 743. We've got a couple more shows. In fact, I've got a bonus show this week as I have, I got to double check, make sure he's still in line, a former Cardinals player who is doing some stuff outside of the NFL these days. Look back at his career and more. Seth and I will be back later this week. And that's until then. Thanks. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Red!